All right, so we just determined that we're in chapter 22 on just about the last page. They've been singing a few songs, actually been having a kirtan, and Thakur has just been in and out of ecstasy and has been chanting the names of God and has taken the dust of the floor of the room because he starts off saying tonight that there's been so much chanting of the Lord's name in this room that this is why the atmosphere has become so intense. And this is a wonderful piece of information here: how to make an atmosphere in a room, for your shrine room, your own shrine room, and in the shrine of the heart. That one of the superpowers that we have as devotees is the ability to make a space holy, to make a space sacred. And so when you chant the names of God in a space with sincerity and earnestness, it makes that space holy. It puts an atmosphere in that space. And our goal in our practice is to chant the name of the Lord so much in the shrine of the heart that we carry our own atmosphere with us. So we don't have to go to temples to imbibe that spirit. We don't have to be in go find a senior Swami somewhere to sit with. That the Mother has given us the ability to generate that temple atmosphere within the temple of the body, and that by chanting the name of God and sitting in the presence in the heart, the drawing room of God, as Sri Ramakrishna says, that we have that same atmosphere inside. We have that same ability to take refuge in our own heart during the day. And if that's not there for you, it's easy to get there. It just takes a little bit of dedication to chant the name. If you're doing a shrine in your home, I would say if you really want to change the atmosphere in that shrine, every day for a week, every hour, say like from 9 to 5 or whatever your hours are that you're home, every hour on the hour, go in and do one string of japam out loud, singing God's name. Do that every day, every hour for a week. When I did it from 9 to 5. So 9, 10, 11, 12, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. I just went in and did one string of japam. Actually, what I was doing was just doing a short 2-minute prayer at that time. But it really works. It will increase your atmosphere in your own shrine at home, and it makes it a more wonderful place to meditate because that atmosphere stays behind. Those words, the name of God, has a purifying power to it, and it stays in a room when you practice with earnestness and with sincerity. If you're going to do it in your own heart, then do that every hour on the hour. Go and sit quietly and do whatever you're going to do. It doesn't have to be a whole round of japam. If that takes too long, just do 10 japam, 10 names of God or something like that. Just do it regularly every hour on the hour for a given number of days. And you'll find it's a real boon for yourself. You'll learn a lot. The thing I learned mostly is how little I thought of God, because I did it back in the 90s, and I used to think that I thought of God all the time, because every time I was thinking of God, I was thinking of God. And so I only asked myself how often I think of God when I'm thinking of God. So I had this sort of mental feeling that I repeated the name of God a lot. When I did that every hour on the hour exercise, I realized that I did not think of God nearly as much as I thought, because that hour on the hour was always such a surprise to me. I was like, wow, already? Right? And then I would go do my little thing of japam and get busy again. And so I learned that I had deluded myself, that I didn't do nearly as much japam or nearly as much thinking of God as I was under the impression of for myself. The other thing is that I realized is that it really worked. It really helped me spiritualize my job. At that time, I was working for the university. And so I found that it really did change the atmosphere in my little cubicle there. and reminded me why I was there, that I was there to love, that I was the ambassador of love in that office. And so this is a practice. And so that's why Thakur is telling you there's been much chanting of the names of the Lord in this room, That's why the atmosphere has become so intense. So there's a direct correlation there. Bhavanat, words of renunciation too. The master said, how thrilling. Then he sang about Gauranga and Nityananda. Gora bestows the nectar of prema. That's that love for love's sake, a love that has no motive behind it, just simply because of love itself. Gora bestows the nectar of prema. Jar after jar, he pours it out, and still there is no end. Sweet Nitai is summoning all. Beloved Gora bids them come. Shantipur is almost drowned, and Nadia is flooded with prema. So this divine love, there's no end to it, and the source of it is within your own self. You can touch it there within your own self, where it bubbles through from the world of the absolute unchanging into this relative world of constant change. Which of course is an impossibility, and yet here it is. It happens, and so you have this wellspring of love within you, and Mother gives it to you. When I took sannyas in 2012, one of the lectures that we were given as a group, there were 52 of us taking sannyas that year. And our sannyas guru told us, he said, yours is not to make the nectar. That God has already churned all of the nectar of heaven. That's Ramakrishna's job. That's not your job as a sannyasin. As a sannyasin, your job is to remain pure, so that all of the holes in you as a conduit can get blocked up, so that when Mother fills your hand with bliss, you can turn around and hand that to the devotees without losing it through all of your own impurities, if you haven't stopped up those leaky parts in yourself. And so for us, it's not just for sannyasins, that's for all of us as members of the Sangha, of Thakur's circle, that he fills our hearts with love. So it's up to us to go into our practice and get our hands filled, for God to fill our hands with divine love. And then for us to carry that attitude with us, that idea of God, the remembrance of the presence with us, so that we can carry that, and through the day we can share that to the divine bliss with people, so that you have something to give. And so all of that happens in your practice. That's where you go and dip your hands in to that big bucket of prema and go out into the world and hand it to people. That this is our superpower as devotees, to be able to chant the name, to create a holy atmosphere within ourselves, to fill our hands with the divine bliss, and then to go out into the world and pass it out. Master to Vijay and the others. The musician sang rightly. A sannyasi must not look at a woman. This is the sannyasi's dharma. What a lofty ideal. Vijay, yes, indeed, sir. Master, others learn from the sannyasi's example. That is why such strict rules are prescribed for him. A sannyasi must not even look at the portrait of a woman. What a strict rule. The slaughtering of a black goat is prescribed for the worship of the Divine Mother, but a goat with even a slight wound cannot be offered. A sannyasi must not only not have intercourse with women, he must not even talk to her. All right, I'm just getting into the details there. Going to make me shift my seat. So this absolute ideal of ours, to be serious about keeping ourselves pure. Why? Because if we're not keeping ourselves pure, which means removing these ideas of me and mine from the body mind, that if we don't do that, maintain that purity, then when Mother pours that bliss into our hands, it leaks out through all the holes of our lust and greed, our lower chakras, that we haven't dealt with, that we haven't secured the gates of the body. And so it's important for us to have that self-control, so that we can have something to give to the world, and Mother fills us with what we have to give. And that's that divine presence, that love. Vijay. Young Haridas talked with a pious woman. For that reason, Chaitanya banished him from his presence. Master. A sannyasi associated with lust and greed or woman in gold is like a beautiful damsel with a bad odor. The odor makes her beauty useless. Yeah, so this is the challenge. I'm feeling quite poked actually inside by this. I'm like, wow, it's always good to be called back to our ideal, to remember and not to forget. Thakur says we live in a sooty room, a room with lots of soot in it in this world that you can't help but getting some soot on your hands. So we should be mindful, because he also talks about, if you're going down a very gentle hill, how far you can go down before you realized you've gone down at all. And so our life in the world, we have to have that kind of eye, constantly measuring ourselves by the teachings of our guru, by the readings of our scripture, and by our own experience. We have to take a careful look at ourselves and make sure that we're doing the work, that we are collecting prema, love from Mother, from God, and that we are turning it around and in the purity of our hearts offering that to the world around us all the time. That this is what it is to be present in the moment, to be in the presence of God, and to have something to give and to share, and that we have to hold ourselves accountable, right? So that we don't just slip into being worldly people who think we're spiritual, worldly people who go to a temple. We have to become spiritual. We have to see ourselves as spiritual. That's what it means to be spiritual. It means to know yourself to be spirit, not material. You're not a body, you're not a mind. To be a spiritual person means that you identify with the spirit in you, that silence, that absolute unchanging reality, which is pure love. And it just sort of wafts off of you. Because if you're a devotee or a sannyasin and your commitments aren't there and you're not doing your practice, it's like a beautiful woman with bad breath or a handsome man with bad breath. It's it's terribly disappointing. So brush your teeth using your japam so that you don't get that bad breath, so that you are not that compromised or that hypocritical spiritual seeker who never gets beyond that first few steps. Once a Marwari devotee wanted to give me some money. Mathur wanted to deed me some land, but I couldn't accept either. The rules for the life of a sannyasi are very strict indeed. If a man takes the garb of a sannyasi, he must act exactly like one. Haven't you noticed in the theater that a man who takes the part of a king acts like a king, and the man who takes the part of a minister acts like a minister? But on attaining the state of the Paramahamsa, one becomes like a child. A child 5 years old doesn't know the difference between a man and a woman. But even a Paramahamsa must be careful so as to not set a bad example to others. Referring to Keshav's association with women in gold, which had hindered his work as a spiritual teacher, Sri Ramakrishna said to Vijay, do you understand? Vijay, yes, sir, Master. He couldn't achieve very much because he wanted to satisfy both God and the world. Vijay, Chaitanya said to Nityananda, Nitai, I shall not be able to do the people any good unless I renounce the world. All will imitate me and want to lead the life of a householder. No one will try to direct his whole mind to the lotus feet of God, renouncing lust and greed. Master, yes, Chaitanya Deva renounced the world to set an example to mankind. Yeah. It was always such an inspiration to me seeing Swami Prabhupada, getting that opportunity to live with that man. I know for myself, I don't think I would have made it if any other Swami had been my head Swami. It was just knowing that if I ever needed to talk to Swami Prabhupada, he was in one of 4 places always. He was either in his office meeting with the devotee, in his room doing his meditation, or in the front room doing his his stationary bicycle. Those are the only places that he would be, or in his room studying if he wasn't doing his japa. Those are the only places that I ever had to look for him. In the 15 years that I lived with him, I never saw that man do a single thing for personal pleasure. Never, not even once. And, you know, just knowing myself, if I had seen any hint of hypocrisy in him, if I had seen anything that would have left me off the hook, I would have been out of there. But like, bye, I'm done. But that man, his life was just so inspiring and his character was so pristine that every time I would get discouraged, every time I would feel like I couldn't do it anymore, I would just remember, he's in the other room doing it. You can do it. He's in the other room doing it. You can do it. And I would give myself that little pep talk, you know, like that. And so that's how we keep going. And that's what Sangha is. It's all of us helping, holding each other up, you know, not letting each of us get overcome by our weaknesses. We see somebody struggling, we just reach out and touch them. You know, and I appreciate this group so much for that, because I was saying yesterday that, you know, encouraging us to write notes and letters to one another in the old-fashioned way, that it's very encouraging. And, you know, after I was finished with class last night, I was sitting there, I was really thinking about it. I was like, wow, I really didn't need to encourage you guys to do that, because you do that. I've gotten so many little notes and letters from you guys. So really that suggestion was for me that I need to start doing it. And so there I am again. It's like I find from Mother that anytime that she has me talking to people, she's actually having me talk to myself. You know, I'm my own student. So yes, the importance really, truly, especially in this modern world, because this reputation of religion is in the toilet. It's just horrible. You know, people just have such a low opinion of religion and religious institutions and religious people. And I'm sorry to say, at least anyway, in our locality, it's probably with good reason. There's so much hypocrisy. And, you know, spiritual people are hardly any different at all from the worldly people on the street. And so for us in our Sangha, how will they know that we're Sangha if we don't have a pure and pristine love for people? How will they know if we can't get rid of our egos to help out each other and to love others in that way? So the sannyasi must renounce woman and gold for his own welfare. Even if he is unattached and consequently not in danger, still, in order to set an example to others, he must not keep woman or lust and greed near him. The sannyasi, the man of renunciation, is a world teacher. It is his example that awakens the spiritual consciousness of men. It was nearly dusk. The devotees saluted the master and took their leave. All right, that's the end of that chapter. But that was such a beautiful couple of pages there to see and hear the master singing and dancing in ecstasy, you know, taking the dust of the very dirt in the room and wiping it on his forehead and going in and out of ecstasy the whole time, and then teaching on top of that, being able to say some of these beautiful things up there. Chapter 23, the festival at Surendra's house. Sunday, June 15th, 1884. Sri Ramakrishna arrived in the morning at the garden house of Surendra, one of his beloved householder disciples. In the village of Konkurgachi, near Calcutta, Surendra had invited him and a large number of the devotees to a religious festival. Occasions like this were a source of great happiness and rejoicing to the master's devotees. He was then seen at his best. He joined with others in devotional music and in chanting the names of God, frequently going into ecstasy. He poured out his entire soul in inspired talk, explaining the various phases of God consciousness. The impressions of such a festival lingered in the minds of all for many days. The devotees stood in rows inside the big hall of the garden house to hear the music sung by the professional singers. The floor of the room was covered with a carpet over which was spread a white sheet. A few bolsters, pillows, and cushions lay here and there. I'm sitting here thinking, what a cool idea. This is just a devotee who's having a spiritual festival at their house and arranging it for having singers there and having teachers there and inviting all the devotees to come. So wink, wink, nudge, nudge, hint, hint. Any of you that want to throw a spiritual festival at your house, it would be awesome. It would be really cool. And invite everyone, invite your friends over, for a day, have some food, some spiritual music, some reading, some whatever. It's your festival, you figure it out. Krishna and the gopis at Vrindavan. The musicians were singing of the episodes in the life of Sri Krishna, especially associated with his divine love for the gopis in Vrindavan. This was a theme which always appealed to the master and would throw him into ecstatic moods. Krishna, God incarnate, lived the years of his boyhood in Vrindavan as a cowherd. He tended his cows on the green meadows along the bank of the Jamuna River and played his flute. The milkmaids could not resist the force of his divine attraction. At the sound of his flute, they would leave their household duties and go to the bank of that sacred river. Their love for Krishna destroyed their attachment to worldly things. Neither the threats of their relatives nor the criticism of others could make them desist from seeking the company of Krishna. In the love of the gopis for Krishna, there was not the slightest trace of worldliness. It was the innate attraction of God for pure souls, as the magnet for iron. The author of the Bhagavata has compared this love to the all-consuming love of a woman for her beloved. Before the onrush of that love, all barriers between man and God are swept away. The devotee surrenders himself completely to his divine beloved, and in the end, becomes one with him. It's a beautiful thing there, listening, just reading through that and just seeing the play of love, the importance of love in our life. That it's this love for God that's going to bind us into that oneness, that's going to give us the impetus to let go, to merge, to jump in. It's going to be because of that love that we've fostered in our time in the presence that we're going to be able to trust in grace, that we're going to be able to hold on to it above and beyond our insecurities and our sense of failings. That it's going to be this love that's going to be the inspiration that puts us into ecstasy for the first time, at the thought of God. That this love is the one most important thing of your day. And it's always good at a time like right now, this time of day, to look back and think of your day. There's one very important question. Did anybody see divine love in you today? Did anyone experience your love for God today? Not in an overt way, but just the sweetness of your face when you showed up at the office, or, the sweetness on your face when you just checked around the corner of your cubicle and said good morning to your neighbor. This is how Thakur was. Every day at the end of the day, he'd roll his face in the dirt. He'd be like, Mother, another day has passed and I still have not seen you. Will my whole life pass in vain like this? Right? Such a seriousness about him in these things. Such a sincere longing in his heart for God. How much the world needs us to do this, to love God like this. Radha was the foremost of the gopis, and Krishna's chief playmate. There's the that's the title I want. Krishna's chief playmate. Krishna's chief playmate. She felt an indescribable longing for union with him. A moment's separation from Krishna would rend her heart and soul. During many a moonlit night, Krishna would dance with Radha and the gopis in the sacred groves of Vrindavan. And on such occasions, the gopis would experience the highest religious ecstasy. At the age of 11, Krishna was called to be the king of Mathura. He left the gopis, promising them, however, his divine vision whenever they concentrated on him in their hearts. For centuries and centuries, the lovers of God in India have been worshipping the divine by recreating in themselves the yearning of the gopis for Krishna. Many of the folk songs of India have their theme as this sweet episode of Krishna's life. Sri Chaitanya revived this phase of Hindu religious life by his spiritual practice and his divine visions. In his ecstatic music, Chaitanya assumed the roles of Radha and manifested the longing to be united with Krishna. For a long period, Sri Ramakrishna also worshipped God as his beloved Krishna, looking on himself as one of the gopis or as God's handmaid. It's a fascinating time to read in Ramakrishna's life. If you read in the Great Master, for more than 6 months, he lived as a woman, dressed as a woman, bathed like a woman, ate like a woman, walked like a woman, dressed like a woman, and for that whole 6 months, he worshiped God, as if he was the handmaid of God. He was a gopi to God's Krishna. There's still that idea in Vrindavan that there are no men in Vrindavan. The only man in Vrindavan is Krishna, and everybody else that's there is a gopi, a lover of Krishna. And so it's fascinating because you see the intensity and the fervency of Ramakrishna's practices. When you read the Great Master, you see, man, when he did a practice, there was just no lukewarmness about it at all. He did that practice full and complete. When he practiced as Hanuman, he saw himself as God's devotee, and he saw himself as Hanuman. He lived in a tree like a monkey for several months. It even says that his body formed a small tail, a monkey tail on the back, because his mind was so focused on that sadhana. The body is a step down from the mind. The mind creates the body for us. So your body exists in your mind. At Surendra's garden house, the kirtan had begun early in the morning. The musicians were singing about the love of Krishna and Radha for each other. The master was frequently in samadhi. The room was crowded with devotees. Among them were Bhavanath, Niranjan, Rakal, Surendra, Ram, and M, and many members of the Brahmo Samaj. In accordance with the custom, the kirtan had begun with an introductory song about Gauranga. Gauranga embraces monastic life. He's being consumed with longing for the vision of Krishna. He leaves Navadvip and goes away as a wandering monk to seek out his beloved. His devotees, unable to bear the pangs of separation, weep bitterly and beg Gauranga to return. The musician sings, "O Gaur, come back to Nadia." Next, the musician sang about the anguish of Radha at her separation from Krishna. When Sri Ramakrishna heard the song, he suddenly stood up. Assuming the mood of Radha, he sang in a voice laden with sorrow, improvising the words, "O friend, either bring my beloved Krishna here or take me to him." Thus singing, he completely lost himself in Radha, could not continue the song. He became speechless, his body motionless, his eyes half closed, his mind totally unconscious of the outer world. He was in deep samadhi. After a long time, he regained a normal consciousness and said in the same heart-rending voice, "O friend, take me to my beloved Krishna and make me your bondslave. I shall be your handmaid forever, O friend. It was you who taught me how to love Krishna. Oh, Krishna, my beloved of my soul." The professional musicians continued their song. They took the part of Radha and sang as if she were talking to her friend. "O friend, shall I not go again to the Jamuna to draw water? Once I beheld my beloved friend under the Kadamba tree. Whenever I pass it, I'm overwhelmed." The master again became abstracted. Heaving a sigh, he said, "Ah, me, ah, me." The song went on. Radha says, "Even the desire for Krishna's presence has cooled and refreshed my feverish body." Now and then the musicians improvised lines to the music, continuing in the attitude of Radha. "Oh, friends, you can wait. Show me Krishna. Show me my beloved." Again, "Do not bother about my ornaments. I have lost my most precious ornament." And again, "Alas, I have fallen on evil days. My happy days are over." And finally, "This unhappy time lingers so long." Sri Ramakrishna improvised a line himself. "Are not better times yet in sight for me?" The musicians then improvised, "Such a long time has passed. Are not better times yet in sight for me?" The musicians sang Radha's words to a friend. "Oh, friend, I'm dying. Surely I die. The anguish of being kept apart from Krishna is more than I have been able to bear. Alas, to whom then shall I leave my priceless treasure when I'm dead? I beg you, do not burn my body. Do not cast it into the river. See that it is not given to the flames. Do not cast it into the water. In this body I played with Krishna. Bind my lifeless form, I beg you, to the black tamala's branches. Tie it to the tamala tree. Touching tamala, it touches black. Krishna is black, and black is tamala. Black is the color that I love. From earliest childhood I have loved it. To the black Krishna my body belongs. Let it not lie apart from black." Radha reaches her last extremity. She faints away. Radha has fallen to the ground. She lies there lost to outward sense, repeating her precious Krishna's name, and straightway doses both of her eyes. Ah, as the drama reached its end, what ails you, O delight of Krishna? Only a moment ago you spoke. Her friends, anointing Radha's form with cool and soothing sandal paste, attempt to bring her back to earth. Some of them weep in a bitter grief. They cannot bear to see her die. Some sprinkle water on her face. Perhaps she will revive again. But oh, can water give back life to one who dies of Krishna's love? Radha's friends chant Krishna's sweet name in her ears. This brings her back to partial consciousness. She looks at the black tamala tree and thinks that Krishna stands before her. Krishna's name restores her life. Once more, her two eyes gaze around, but Krishna's face she cannot see. Alas, how bitterly she weeps. Where is my Krishna? Where is he, whose name you chanted in my ears? Bring him but once before me here. Seeing the black tamala tree, she stares at it and cries aloud, "There is his crest. I see it clearly. There's my Krishna's lovely crest." But only a peacock did she see, whose glistening feathers she mistook for the gay feather on Krishna's crest. Krishna has gone to Mathura to assume his royal duties. He has discarded his cowherd's dress and flute and put on the royal regalia. Radha's friends, after a hurried consultation, send a gopi to Mathura as messenger. She meets a woman of that city of her own age who asks where she comes from. Radha says, I don't have to call Krishna. He himself will come to me. But nonetheless, she follows the woman of Mathura and goes to Krishna's palace. In the street, she weeps, overcome with grief, and prays to Krishna, O Hari, where are you? O life of the gopis, enchanter of our heart, O beloved Radha, O Hari, remover of your devotees' shame, come to us once more. With great pride, I said to the people of Mathura that you yourself would come to me. Please do not humiliate me. In scorn, the woman of Mathura says, Oh, you who are only a simple milkmaid, how can you go to see our king, our Krishna, in your beggar's rags? Behind 7 doors his chamber stands. You cannot enter. How can you go? I die of shame to see your boldness. Tell me, how will you manage to enter? Says the gopi. Krishna, beloved, soul of the gopis, oh, where are you? Come to me here and save my life. Where are you, adorable soul of the gopis? Come to me, Lord of Mathura, and save the life of your sorrowing handmaid. Where are you, beloved of Radha, Lord of our hearts and friend of our souls? O Hari, destroyer of our shame. O priceless treasure of the gopis, come to your handmaid and save her honor. Thus the messenger weeps and cries out for Krishna. When the musicians sang, Where are you, adorable soul of the gopis? The master went into samadhi. As the music neared its end, the musicians sang even louder. Sri Ramakrishna was on his feet again in deep samadhi. Regaining partial consciousness, he said in a half-articulate voice, Kitna, Kitna. He was too much overwhelmed to utter Krishna's name distinctly. The kirtan was coming to a close. At the reunion of Radha and Krishna, the master sang with the musicians, composing the lines himself. Behold, there Radha stands by Krishna. On his bosom she reclines, beholding her standing at his left like a golden creeper twining around a black tumala tree. As the music came to a close, the master led the chorus. All chanted together to the accompaniment of drums and cymbals. Victory to Radha and Krishna. Hallowed be the names of Radha and Krishna. The devotees felt a surge of divine emotion and danced around the master. He too danced in an ecstasy of joy. The names of God echoed and re-echoed in the house and in the garden. After the music, the master sat with the devotees. Just then Niranjan arrived and prostrated himself before him. At the very sight of his beloved disciple, the master stood up with beaming eyes and a smiling face and said, You have come too. To M, you see, this boy is absolutely guileless. One cannot be guileless without a great deal of spiritual discipline in previous births. A hypocritical and a calculating mind can never attain God. Don't you see that God incarnates himself only in a family where innocence exists? How guileless Dasaratha was. So was Nanda, Krishna's father. There is a saying, how innocent a man he is. He is just like Nanda to Niranjan. I feel as if a dark veil has covered your face. It is because you have accepted a job in an office. One must keep accounts there. Besides, one must attend to many other things, and that always keeps the mind in a state of worry. You're serving in an office like other worldly people, But there is a slight difference in that you are earning money for the sake of your mother. One must show the highest respect to one's mother, for she is the very embodiment of the blissful mother of the universe. If you had accepted the job for the sake of wife and children, I should have said, fie upon you, shame, 1,000 shames. Tamani Malik, pointing it to Niranjan, look at this boy. He's absolutely guileless. But he has one fault. He is slightly untruthful nowadays. The other day he said that he would visit me again very soon, but he didn't come. Niranjan, that is why Rakal asked you why you didn't come to see me while you were at Aryadaha, so near to Dakshineshwar. Niranjan, I was there only a couple of days. Master to Niranjan, pointing to M. He's the headmaster of a school. At my bidding, he went to see you. To M. Did you send Babaram to me the other day? The master went on to an adjoining room and began to talk with some of the devotees there. The master to M. Ah, how wonderful was the yearning of the gopis for Krishna. They were seized with divine madness at the very sight of the black tamala tree. Separation from Krishna created such a fire of anguish in Radha's heart that it dried up even the tears in her eyes. Her tears would disappear in steam. There were other times when nobody could notice the depth of her feeling. People did not notice the plunge of an elephant in a big lake. Yes, sir, that is true. Chaitanya, too, experienced a similar feeling. He mistook a forest for the sacred grove of Vrindavan and the dark water of the ocean for the blue Jamuna. Master, if anyone has but a particle of such prema, what yearning, what love. Radha possessed not only 100% of divine love, but 125%. That is what it means to be intoxicated with an ecstatic love of God. The sum and substance of the whole matter is that a man must love God, must be restless for him. It does not matter whether you believe in God with form or in God without form. You may or may not believe that God incarnates himself as a man, but you will realize him if you have that yearning. Then he himself will let you know what he is like. If you must be mad, why should you be mad for the things of the world? If you must be mad for God alone. Presently, Sri Ramakrishna returned to the main hall of the house. A big pillow was placed near him for his use. Before touching it, he said, Om Tat Sat. Perhaps the pillow had been used by many worldly people, and that was why he purified it in this way. Bhavanat, M, and other devotees sat near him. It was getting late, but there was no indication that the meal was going to be served. The master became impatient like a child and said, I don't see any sign of food. What's the matter? Where is Narendra? A devotee with a smile. Sir, Rambabu is the manager of the feast. He is superintending everything. Master laughing. Oh, Ram is the manager. Then we know what to expect. A devotee. Things like this always happen when he's the supervisor. Everyone laughs. That's why I love this book is totally heartless when it comes to that. I mean, some people, it's funny, you find these people talked about in this scripture, and their faults or their weaknesses are just laid bare, for all, literally for the rest of humanity's time. There's going to be the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna talking about Ram being a lousy manager. Master to the devotees, where is Surendra? What a nice disposition he has now. He is very outspoken. He isn't afraid to speak the truth. He's unstinting in his liberality. No one that goes to him for help comes away empty-handed. You went to Bhagavan Das. What sort of man is he? M. Oh, he's very old now. I saw him in Kalna. It was night. He lay on a carpet, and a devotee fed him with food that had been offered to God. He can hear only if one speaks very loudly into his ear. Hearing me mention your name, he said, you have nothing to worry about. Bhavanat to M. You haven't been to Dakshineshwar for a long time. The master asked me about you and said one day, has M lost all taste for this place? Bhavanat laughed as he said these words. The master heard their conversation and said to M in a loving voice, yes, that's true. Why haven't you been to Dakshineshwar for such a long time? M could only stammer some lame excuses. Just then, Mahimacharan arrived. He lived at Kasipur near Calcutta. Mahimacharan held the master in great respect and was a frequent visitor at the temple garden. He was a man of independent means, having inherited some ancestral property. He devoted his time to religious thought and to the study of the scripture. He was a man of some scholarship, having studied many books both in Sanskrit and English. The master to Mahima, what is this? I see a steamship here. Meaning, he's a big boat of learning, a big pundit. I see a big steamship here. All laugh. We expect here a small boat at the most, but a real steamship has now arrived. But then I know it's the rainy season, right? The rainy season meaning I'm here. God has incarnated, and so of course the waters are so high that holiness can get everywhere in these times because it's being flooded by the presence of God on earth by the incarnation. And so he makes that statement in another place as well, that when in the rainy season you can take the boat anywhere. You don't have to follow the berms. So it's the rainy season. God, the talk of God, the spirit of God, the samadhi. You read in the gospel. That's the real trick of that gospel. I tell you, the first time I read that back in the 90s, people are popping into ecstasy left and right. They're going into samadhi, passing out in ecstatic moods over God, realizing him all over the place. I read that book, and literally when I took my initiation from Moksha Prana back in 99, the first year of my spiritual life, I thought I was going to realize God any minute, because in the gospel everybody's doing it. It's like, oh, that must happen like crazy. That must be no problem at all. And I remember that first year I would meditate a long time, not because I was motivated to meditate a long time, but because I was afraid to get up. I was afraid that I would get up just before it was going to happen and I would miss it. So I would sit there and meditate and sit there longer because I didn't want to miss it. There's a poem by Hafiz where he talks about how he was the devotee was up on his rooftop dancing that night and twirling, singing the names and glories of God. And Hafiz in the poem said that, oh, me and the beloved, we ran to put on our dancing clothes. But by the time we got back, you had already stopped spinning. If you had just spun one more time, we could have danced with you on the roof that night. And I always had that in my mind, with my practice in that first year. I just was so sure that I would realize God any minute and would sit there naively going on, afraid to get up because I didn't want to miss it. I really long for that kind of faith in those days. I've learned now the real condition of my mind and my body, the real karma that I was carrying with me at that time. But we will realize God in this life. Thakur promised that. I remind you of it again, and I dare you to not believe that. Thakur promises you, if you've come to this place, if you've come to Thakur, this is your last birth. And when Mother was asked, what did she say? She says, well, if it's not your last one, it's within one or two of your last ones. So it's almost finished for you, my happy mendicants of God. The master was conversing with Mahimachala. He asked him, "Isn't feeding people a kind of service to God? God exists in all beings as fire. To feed people is to offer oblations to that indwelling spirit." See, this is that wonderful thing. This is why I believe in the Katha Upanishad, when Nachiketas, when death, Yama is teaching Nachiketas about the final sacrifice, or the sacrifice that would give him the knowledge of what happens after death, right? It's an infuriating thing when you first read that book, because that's the whole point of the book. And then when he starts telling Nachiketas how to build this altar to perform this sacrifice that he's named after Nachiketas himself, it doesn't give you any of the details. It just skims over that whole part. And I was like reading, I was like, what? Well, you just left out the point of the whole thing. you, you didn't even tell me how to do this sacrifice. And I remember just really being puzzled by that. How is that possible? And then I understood, because the fire for Nachiketas, that offering, that worship, that puja that bears our name, is the puja we do with this body. You know, the fire that burns inside, everything that we put into the flames of this body, through our mouth, through our nose, through our eyes, through our ears, through touch, all of that is an offering on the shrine of the temple of the heart. You know, all of your actions are your prayers. All of your thoughts are your prayers. And Mother answers every one of them with a yes, right? That's why you have to become one-pointed in what you're longing for and what you're asking for, because she gives you that yes, but it gets averaged out with all of your prayers. So that prayer for realization is mixed in with that prayer for a new car, and that prayer for good health, and that prayer for whatever. So all of those things get put into the bag, and Mother pours them all out on the table and says yes to all of them, but in the proportion at which they were prayed, right? And so in your day today, what did you pray for on your shrine that bears your name, right? What did you put there? What have you asked for? Can you remember? Was it single-mindedness? Was it a single prayer for your freedom? He asked him, "Isn't feeding people a kind of service to God? God exists in all beings as fire. To feed people is to offer oblations to that indwelling spirit. But then one shouldn't feed the wicked. I mean, people who are entangled in gross worldliness, or who have committed heinous crimes like adultery. Even the ground where such people sit becomes impure to a depth of 7 cubits. Once Hriday fed a number of people at his native place. A good many of them were wicked. I said to Hriday, 'Look here, if you feed such people, I shall leave your house at once.' To Mahima, 'I hear that you used to feed people, but now you don't give any such feasts. Is it because the expenses have gone up?' Laughter. The meal was to be served on the south veranda of the house. Leaf plates were being placed on the floor. The master said to Mahimacharan, 'Please go there and see what they're doing. You may help them a little in serving the food.' But I shouldn't ask you. Mahimacharan said, 'Let them bring in the food. I shall see.' Hemming and hawing, he went toward the kitchen, but presently he came back. Sri Ramakrishna and the devotees enjoyed the meal greatly. Afterward, he rested a while, and about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, Pratap Chandra Mazumdar of the Brahmo Samaj arrived. He was a co-worker of Keshab Chandra Sen and had been to Europe and America in connection with the Brahmo missionary work. He greeted Sri Ramakrishna and the master too, bowed before him with his usual modesty. They were engaged in conversation, and we'll stop there for tonight. Anybody have any? Oops, turn off the